Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast. It's my first podcast since sabbatical, so welcome back to me. And I've got here today a special guest. We're doing a Northwood story with Miss Kelly Benefield, and we've actually done your husband on one of the stories too.
Did.
So
now you get the other half of the story.
Yeah, you get the other half of the story. We get the truth, right?
Yes, you get the truth.
Well, we're interviewing Kelly today because she's recently become one of our ACBC certified biblical counselors here at the NorthWoods Church and is counseling a bunch of people. And we wanted to introduce her to our church community so that when people see her face on the screen on Sunday morning, that they know the life story of who's behind the face. And so we'll get started here. So where did you grow up, Kelly?
So I grew up in upstate New York, a small town called Oneida, which is probably about 30 minutes east of Syracuse, New York. If you've heard of that. So yes, I'm in the South now with my Yankee blood.
Did you grow up rooting for Syracuse University?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
They were pretty good in basketball for a long stretch.
Stretch of time.
Long
stretch. And then we lost Bayheim, and now we're
in the wilderness.
Now we're in the wilderness. Yes, that's correct.
Do you still have family in Oneida?
I do.
Yeah.
I still have family there. I would say Evansville is definitely home now.
Yeah. Well, for people that haven't been to upstate New York is very different from New York City.
Yes.
Different.
It's very different.
I think when most people think about New York, they think about New York City, but there are wonderful, serene places.
Very serene, very cold, a lot of snow in the winter, but we do a lot of outdoor sports there. So like in the wintertime, there's ice skating and everybody's out on their snowmobiles. It's a lot of country, a lot of hills. If you think of like the Adirondacks, that's what Syracuse area is like. So definitely the complete opposite of New York City.
Were you an ice skater?
No. I don't have the coordination for that, Matt.
Well, you mentioned ice skating, so I figured I'd ask.
Skiing, yes. Skiing, yes. Ice skating, no.
Yeah. I've tried both of those, and I don't ski or skate. I fall. I fall very well.
Yes. Yeah.
So what do you remember from childhood?
I had an interesting childhood. A lot of trauma, but I was also very blessed to have some wonderful, wonderful grandparents who really loved me and really took care of me and really taught me a lot of things. So parents were divorced when I was very young, and I really lived among 4 different houses. So I had my biological mother, and then I had my biological father. So I went between there, but then I also had 2 sets of grandparents where I really spent a lot of time with them as well. I kind of grew up like a chameleon, going to 4 different homes, if you will. So as I got older and got married and my husband's job moves us a lot, I was very well prepared for that.
Well, what was your first experience like with church?
So spent a lot of time with my grandparents on my dad's side, and they were very strict Catholic. So I grew up you went to church on Sunday, but it was very ritualistic, if that makes sense to a lot of people. So very different to my life now and being called to the Lord. It was more about obligation. It was more about fitting into a mold versus really getting to know and love Jesus for what he's done for us.
What were you like as a teenager?
Oh, wow. I read a lot. I kept to myself a lot. I did not have a lot of friends. I was the type of an individual that always wanted to fix things. I was always the problem solver. So I think that I didn't like the groups. You know how you got your cliquey little groups, and I just wasn't into all of that. I was very blessed to my dad and my stepmom had a horse farm. So I spent a lot of time horseback riding. I spent a lot of time in the barn.
You're living the teenage girl dream there.
Really, I just loved it. I could go horseback riding whenever I wanted and go out and brush my horse and do that kind of thing. So that was a really big stress reliever for me. And I probably spent more time around my horses than I actually did around people. So they're much easier to get along with.
Well, how did you come into a relationship with Jesus?
So I spent most of my life up until my 30s living for myself. I thought that was the way it was supposed to be, right? God created us to live for ourselves, which is very wrong. And in my middle 30s, the Lord led me to a wonderful man who grew up knowing Jesus, and he was very persistent. It wasn't love at first sight for me. It was for him, and I'm just so grateful to God that he was as persistent as he was. And I remember our first date, he took me to church. That was our first date.
Wow.
And, when you grow up in a Catholic church and then you walk into a Baptist church, it's very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can remember walking in going, okay, I can never date this guy again. This is not going to work. This is not going to work. And
not enough standing and kneeling in church.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why don't we stand and kneel? And why are there people on the altar? And he's like, what altar? That's a stage.
Mm-hmm.
So all these different things. I'm used to the choir being in the back and we have musical instruments and all this other stuff. So it was just really different for me. And I remember telling him, I don't think this is going to work. And he just kept with persistence. It's how the Lord works. He's like, just come back to church. Just one more time. Let's just give this a chance. So I went back and actually met with the pastor, who was a wonderful man. And he very slowly kept opening the Bible and teaching me things that I had no idea even existed. And I would say probably after 3 or 4 months of just working with him every Wednesday night for an hour, he would go through the Bible with me. And then the Lord just really opened up my heart. And I was like, wow, I've been doing this all wrong. All wrong.
So what did you struggle with after you became a Christian?
I think the biggest thing that I struggled with, and I think a lot of people could probably relate to this, is when you become a Christian, you get very excited, right, about knowing the Lord. But you kind of stop there and you don't take it to the next step of really knowing the Lord, really knowing how you're designed, and really knowing how you're supposed to live. So I kept living as if the world was created for Kelly. Now, I knew the Lord, right? And he was in my life, but I wasn't, as Ephesians tells us, I wasn't putting off the old and putting on the new.
Right.
And that's huge. That's a huge piece. So I had to learn to start walking and learning to be more Christ-like, which is God's will for all of us.
Yeah. What drew you into biblical counseling? What is it about biblical counseling that is the jazziest thing ever?
I think the jazziest thing ever is I started taking classes. As soon as I became a Christian, I wanted to learn more. So we were living in North Carolina and I went to take biblical classes at a college called Carolina College of Biblical Studies. And took my first 2 classes, just kind of basic, understanding the Bible. I think I took like New Testament 1 type of classes. And a professor came up to me, amazing man, and he was probably in his early 80s and he was still teaching. And he came up to me and he said, have you ever thought about biblical counseling? And at that point, I didn't even know like what's biblical counseling. And he spent a lot of time teaching me what it was. And the Lord just put it on my heart. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I think what really got me excited is that as Christians, we don't know how to live to our design. We were designed to function a certain way. We were hardwired a certain way. And when you don't live to that design, things in your life really have a tendency to go downhill pretty quick.
Right.
So as I started learning and diving into the Bible and reading and really understanding what I was reading, I was like, I want everybody to know this, right? It's like this, Jesus gives us a gift. And I was like, I've got this gift and I want everybody to be able to participate in that. So I just kept learning and studying and growing, and it's just, I absolutely love it.
That's awesome. Well, what are you currently learning about Jesus?
A wonderful pastor gave me a really great book. Not quite sure. What's his name? Oh, Matt Higgins. Yes.
Oh.
A really great book I just finished called Just Do Something.
Yes, it's Just Do Something by Kevin DeYoung.
And it really talks a lot about God's will.
Yeah.
And really learning that Jesus wants us to obey him.
Yeah. Jesus
wants us to become more like him every day. So when we get to the point of making decisions like, should I go to this college or that college? It's not so much that I pick college A over college B. It's more of, what are my motives?
Yeah.
Right? What's going to be the outcome of this? Am I going to a school that's going to enrich me to where I'll be able to follow the Lord more? And you start to look at those things more than, well, I like this college because it's got a better cafeteria, or should I go to, you know what I mean? It's making decisions really based on the will that God has for us, which is that we're following him and we're growing like him every day.
Yeah. It's one of the best books I've read on the will of God. And, I think a lot of Christians just get stuck in the issue of the will of God, is that they get petrified of making a decision and not offending God in the process of making a decision. And therefore, they get paralyzed and they want to be like Gideon with the fleece, which is not a good example.
No.
But people take it as a great example of we're going to throw out this fleece and see if God does it.
Yep.
But really, we just need to do some things and God will affirm it or not affirm it. And it's a great book on the will of God. Maybe we'll have to do a podcast on it.
I think we should, because it really taught me a lot. And I think it would teach a lot of people a lot, because we're always making decisions, right? And this book really tells you how to be able to go about doing that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people would say, does God just want for me to be like more Christ-like and more sanctified? Well, yeah, that's not a small deal. That's like the
That's the huge deal.
Yeah,
that's huge.
That's the worth most eternal significance. Hey, let's get into some fun questions. So what was the first concert you ever attended?
Genesis.
Really?
Yes.
With Peter Gabriel or with Phil Collins?
So with Phil Collins.
Okay.
With Phil Collins back in the 80s.
Okay.
I actually came to Syracuse, and it was just amazing. It was just amazing. And I'm not a big concert music person, so yeah, it was fun.
Cool. We were talking about Genesis yesterday in worship team, that Phil Collins is known as a singer, but he was actually one of the best drummers of all time.
Exactly.
He's a great drummer. Yep. Great drummer. What is the worst food ever?
Mexican.
What?
Mexican.
No.
Yes, Mexican.
Oh, no. Like, is anything specific or just the whole genre?
The whole thing of Mexican.
Oh, wow.
As a matter of fact, my husband gets excited when I go on business trips, because then he can go out and have Mexican because he loves it. And I do not like it. So I do not cook it. It doesn't come into our house. And on date night when we go out, it's not Mexican. So sorry for all of those who love it, but it's just no.
I don't think if you can join us here in Northwoods.
I know, because you guys are always.
We're here all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Who is someone that you miss?
I would say my grandfather. Just a wonderful, kind, gentle man. Miss his stories, miss his guidance and his patience and his love. So I was very, very blessed that the Lord gave him to me.
Awesome. Yeah. What profession would you like to try other than the one you currently have? And before you get into this, what is the day job that you currently have?
So my day job, which I'm going away from because I really want to make biblical counseling, my gig. That's my jam. But I've been in recruitment for a very long time. So I was leading a company in what we call outsourced recruitment. And what that is we go into big companies and we take over their recruitment for them. So we do all of their hiring and guide them and give them counsel on how they would best hire people and hiring practices and things of that nature. So that's my day job. Like I said, getting away from that to get into biblical counseling. But
which we're thankful for. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
But what would you like to do?
Okay, so don't laugh.
Okay.
So this is pie in the sky. This is big stuff. So one of two things, either the Queen of England or the First Minister of Ireland. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
My goal is to end up in Ireland. I have a huge passion for Ireland and have done a lot of missions there and want to do that in my retirement days. But I want to be in a position to where I can have influence to be able to really help and teach people to be able to live the way that God designed us to. So I feel like as the Queen, I could kind of maybe push that through to the Prime Minister and start working with that particular staff, if you will. So yes, dream big, right?
Queen of England.
Yes.
Okay. Are you into the royals then?
I know that, yes. We watched those shows, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you watch Princess Diana's wedding?
I did.
Yeah. Yeah. For those that are not old enough to remember, that was a big deal.
That was a huge deal.
Yeah, that was one of those moments where like everybody, the world stopped and you just watched TV.
Yeah, the world stopped.
Yeah.
The beautiful dress and just the formality of it and the classiness of it and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Okay, what do you do to relax?
I bake.
Yes, very well.
I bake. I love baking stuff for the church and the church staff and just people in general. I love bringing it to my counselees and my love goes into it and it helps me relax. It's a very big stress reliever for me.
And I don't know why Brad is not 500 pounds.
There's been moments where he said, "Can you please stop?" He would go to bed at night on a Monday night and say, "Please stop baking." And then he would get up Tuesday morning and say, did I say that? No, let's scratch that off. So yeah. Yeah.
There's moments of rationality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What is your favorite music album?
Right now, I really like Jeremy Camp.
Okay.
I like Jeremy Camp. I like Third Day.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of Christian music, I will be honest, I couldn't even tell you.
Yeah.
Growing up years ago, back in the 80s, I would say The Police, Foreigner 4, that kind of music. But right now, I would say mostly in that Christian music.
Yeah. Well, those are good choices.
You know?
I've seen Third Day probably more than any other Christian band.
Have you?
Not intentionally, but there was a phase where like they were on the road all the time. And so whatever concert festival we went to, Third Day was there. And so
I love it. I love it.
All right. What is your favorite dessert? And I'm sure that this will be a hard question with you being a baker.
Actually, it's an easy question.
Really? Okay.
Lemon meringue pie.
Oh, that's a good one.
I love lemon, and growing up, my grandmother always made me different types of desserts with lemon in them.
Mm-hmm.
My grandma was a baker, so I grew up around a lot of baking and was very blessed that the Lord gave me a wonderful metabolism so I can eat all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, definitely, I would say anything lemon.
Mm-hmm. Are you still confident enough to ride a horse today?
Yes, actually, I am. It would probably take me a minute to get, my muscles are not as flexible as I once was. I loved riding, but we also lived close to a horse track where they did horse racing.
Oh, wow.
So that was really my interest more so than riding.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time at the track and really taking care of the horses and really what we would call stress management, making sure that they're in a condition where they can get out and run each week. So I spent a lot of time with the vets and just learning different things with our local veterinarian and things like that. So I would say as much as I enjoyed riding, I spent a lot of time at the track around the racehorses.
Did you ever race on a racehorse?
I did not, but I spent a lot of time there. I spent a ton of time there.
Yeah. So you weren't a jockey?
I was not a jockey. No, I was not that skinny. So.
Because they have to be really tiny to be a jockey.
They're
right?
tiny.
Yeah.
Yes, they're very tiny.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to really work at that. And yeah, they have a lot of practices that I would not recommend. But yeah, I really enjoyed that as a teen.
Yeah. Has Brad ever ridden a horse?
Yes. As a matter of fact, on our honeymoon, we went horseback riding. We took a very different route for our honeymoon and decided we wanted to go to a dude ranch.
Wow.
We spent a week at a dude ranch and it was just wonderful. We met some really great people and
you did city slickers.
We did. Yes. We were actually at in Montana.
Oh, wow.
Glacier, up by Glacier National Park. And we did a horseback ride, like a 20-mile horseback ride all the way over right on the border of Canada. Mm-hmm. So it was just gorgeous.
Yeah. So you said your planned final destination is Ireland.
Absolutely.
Tell us about why and what your hopes are there.
So I love the people of Ireland. I just felt like it was family from the moment that we got there. I mean, there's room for ministry anywhere, right? In our own backyard in Evansville, we can be doing ministry, but I just really felt that there was so much need for ministry there, especially in Southern Ireland. So as I got there and started meeting people, I just felt like that was my place. I liked their just different types of customs and their love for people. They take things much slower, I think, than we do. We're always in a hurry in the United States. And I think that in Ireland, they have more of that appreciation to just really slow down and to love your neighbor and to love the people around you and just to take the time with those people. And I think sometimes it can happen anywhere, but I think in the U.S., we're just always in a hurry for the next thing that we don't stop, for lack of a better term, to smell the flowers. And I just love the culture and I just love the history. They went through so much in Belfast and they're finally at a place of peace. So that's where we are going to retire. And my goal is to be able to get there at least once or twice every year to just be able to learn and grow and see what the Lord has planned.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to visiting you when you have a stone house and a yard full of sheep and things like that. You have an affinity for sheep, right?
I love sheep.
Yeah.
I love sheep. Sheep are my thing, actually. When we did VBS, I was talking to the children about Ireland and I brought a sheep, a little stuffed plush sheep. And the kids were so cute. They're like, that's Shaun the Sheep, the movie Shaun the Sheep. So yes, I have a Shaun the Sheep. So I will definitely invite you, Matt. I will definitely have that stone house and I will definitely have sheep running around in my front yard.
Awesome.
And yes, Brad's on.
He's on board.
He's on board with all this. Yeah.
Well, look forward to that. And it was nice spending some time with you, Kelly. And if you're interested in biblical counseling, we do have a page on our church website that'll give you some more information about that. We see lots of different people with lots of different counseling issues, and we'd love to be a help to you. We have 3 certified biblical counselors here on staff and other people that are working their way through the process. It's just one of our ways that as Northwoods, we serve our community. So come seek us out, and we'd love to tell you more about our program. Thanks for tuning in to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast. If you'd like to find out more about NorthWoods Church, you can visit us at our website, www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org.